Welcome to this edition of our Essential Vector series, all about flaps. The Essential Vector series is sponsored by Avemco Insurance and created by Gene Benson. Flaps are secondary flight controls. Flap extension increases both lift and induced drag for any given angle of attack. Typically, the first half of travel increases lift more than drag, while the second half increases drag with little additional increase in lift. Flaps allow a compromise between a high cruising speed and a low landing speed. Flap extension may cause a nose-up or nose-down pitching moment, necessitating a trim adjustment. In a high-wing airplane, flap extension generally causes the nose to pitch up due to increased downwash on the tailplane. In a low-wing airplane, flap extension generally causes the nose to pitch down. This is because the increased lift generated by the flaps, especially at the rear of the wing, creates a nose-down pitching moment. Other design factors may result in different performance characteristics. Know what to expect with flap extension before beginning an approach. There are several types of flaps, and some airplanes use a combination of two types. For our purposes, we will look at just four types: plain, slotted, Fowler, and split. The plain flap is a simple section of the wing trailing edge that is hinged and can be extended. It increases both lift and induced drag. The most common type of flaps in use today are slotted flaps. Slotted flaps attach to the trailing edge of the wing and get their name from the gap or slot that opens between them and the wing when they're extended. The magic of slotted flaps and the reason for their prevalent use in both large and small aircraft lies in the aerodynamic nature of the slot. With flaps extended, when the high-pressure air that is traveling along the bottom of the wing reaches the slot, it flows through and emerges on the upper side of the flap. This influx of high-pressure air has re-energizing effect on the wing's boundary layer. This delays airflow separation, resulting in more lift with less drag. Fowler flaps are like large extension of the slotted flaps. Fowler flaps can have several extension settings, and the flaps themselves being extended on a set of rails or tracks. Slots in the flap segments function like the slots of a slotted flap to refresh the wing's boundary layer with a fresh dose of high-pressure air. Since they ride aft on rails, they may increase wing area slightly and modify the camber. In the single-engine, high-wing Cessnas, there is a little increase in wing area, so some refer to these flaps as slotted with Fowler characteristics. Split flaps were introduced in the 1930s and were common on military aircraft and civilian airliners such as the Douglas DC series. They are a rare sight today outside of historic warbirds at air shows, since at full deflection the flap acts as a spoiler and significantly increases the drag coefficient, without correspondingly substantial benefits to the lift. Here are a few things we should note regarding the use of flaps. Flap extension during approaches and landings provides several advantages, by first producing greater lift and permitting lower approach and landing speeds. They also produce greater drag, permitting a steeper descent angle. They increase forward visibility by allowing a lower pitch attitude. And they reduce the length of the landing roll. This FAA graphic shows us the effect the use of flaps can have on the landing or touchdown point. This FAA graphic shows us the effect the use of flaps can have on the approach angle. Regarding the effect of the flaps, flap deflection up to 15 degrees primarily produces lift with minimal drag. Flap deflection beyond 15 degrees produces a large increase in drag. Large changes in flap deflection can produce large lift changes that require significant pitch and power changes. Large changes in flap deflection at one single point in the landing pattern can produce large lift changes that require significant pitch and power changes. And always expect a pitch change with any change in flap settings. A final caution before we leave our discussion of flaps. If one flap hangs up on the rails, the force of the flap motor can cause the linking mechanism to fail, allowing that flap to fully retract with the airflow while the other flap sticks in the extended position. This can lead to a loss of control when slowing to landing speed. Here is a possible scenario. The pilot begins to add flaps on downwind and the left flap catches. The mechanism fails at the flap motor. The left flap retracts fully, leaving the flaps immobilized with the right flap extended at about 25 degrees and the left flap fully retracted. The pilot can control it with aileron until the airplane slows down. Remember our disclaimer at the beginning? Know and abide by the approved airplane flight manual or pilot's operating handbook regarding the use of flaps. Thanks for watching this episode of our Essential Vectors series. Check out all the other topics in the series. Thanks to Avemco Insurance for their sponsorship. I'm Gene Benson.